I belong to you now. A human man inherits an alien princess wife and wealth. Jared Quinn had exactly 3 goals that morning. Fix the left thruster of the Rust Bucket Delight, avoid his ex's calls, and maybe, just maybe, salvage something shiny enough to sell before dinner. As usual, the universe had other ideas. He first picked up the signal while wedged upside down in the ship's engine compartment, trying to convince a very reluctant coolant valve to behave. The static ping blared through the comm system, startling him into banging his forehead on a metal panel labeled "Caution, probably not explosive." The label had been added in crayon. By him. "Please," he muttered, yanking himself free and wiping grease across his already grease-stained shirt. "Let this be an abandoned snack ship full of mint ration bars, and not another ghost beacon." It wasn't. Well, not exactly. The signal came from the Perseid Expanse, a place Jared only visited when he was either desperate or bored enough to ignore how often ships vanished there. It was full of warped debris fields, spatial echoes, and the occasional drunk wormhole. Jared consulted his ship's AI, a budget model called Junie 3 that had a personality somewhere between a sassy librarian and a bored cat. "Junie," he said, buckling into the pilot seat, "what do we know about distress signal 57 Tango Delta?" "It's ancient," Junie replied. "Imperial class. Encryption matches something from the Zyrian dynasty." Jared blinked. "Aren't they all dead?" "Dead, exploded, legally erased from the galactic record. You know, the usual." That got his attention. The Zyrians were the kind of empire that didn't just fall. They implode with a scream, a scandal, and a small black hole. Nobody survived. Nobody claimed anything. Which meant no one's looted it yet, Jared said, voice hushed like someone might overhear and steal the idea right out of his mouth. "Junie, fire up the scooper." The Rust Bucket Delight groaned in protest as it entered the coordinates, the engines coughing like an asthmatic dragon, but they made it. The ship was massive. Even drifting in space, it looked like something grown rather than built. Elegant arches of dark silver metal with iridescent veins, like a cathedral crossbred with a stingray. Jared circled it, breath caught somewhere between awe and greed. "You sure no one's claimed this?" If by claimed you mean gotten murdered trying, then yes, entirely unclaimed. With the excitement of a raccoon who just discovered a buffet dumpster, Jared suited up and docked. The ship's airlocks hissed open, miraculously still functioning. Inside, the lights flickered as though trying to decide whether to wake up or give up. He wandered through the main corridors, finding nothing but dust, opulence, and some suspiciously well-preserved fruit. "Luxury," he muttered, poking a glowing panel that might have once dispensed royal tea. "And I thought that one freighter with the bidet room was fancy." Then he found her. In a chamber that smelled faintly of stardust and expensive perfume, Jared entered what could only be described as a cryo-sanctum. Floating in the center, encased in a pod of transparent alloy, was a woman. She was tall, elegant, and disturbingly perfect in the way only alien royalty or mannequins could be. Her long white hair fanned around her like liquid silk. Her skin shimmered with faint blue undertones, and her ears, those were the giveaway, were long, curved upward like silvered blades. "Oh no," Jared said, immediately backing up. "Nope, not poking the space princess. That's how horror stories start." But the pod beeped, then hissed, then opened, and the princess opened her eyes. They were violet, not the soft kind of violet, but the might smite you with a thought kind. She looked at him, looked through him, tilted her head slightly and muttered language that sounded like music being murdered. Then, somehow, she switched to Galactic Standard. "You are not the High Regent." "Yeah, no, I'm Jared Quinn, Salvager, unofficial junk whisperer." She blinked. "The emergency inheritance protocol has been triggered." "Wait, the what now?" The lights brightened. A beam scanned him from head to toe, beeping disapprovingly at his boots. "Genetic key accepted. You are the next of lineage. Per Royal Code X9 Delta, you now possess all Imperial assets and responsibilities." "Okay, listen, I think there's been a mistake. I am very much not ready for whatever this is. I don't even do my taxes." She stepped out of the pod with the grace of a space ballerina, her gown fluttering in 0G. "I am Princess Lyra of House Zyrian, first of the Veilborn, keeper of the 6th star, bride of the sovereign. My life and service are now bound to you." Jared blinked. "I'm sorry. Did you just say I belong to you now?" Silence. Then Junie's voice crackled over the comms. She's not joking. Your DNA matched some obscure clause. Technically, she's yours. Also, her dowry includes 2 moons, a small fleet, and an unpaid war debt the size of Jupiter. Jared opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Do I get a choice in this? Princess Lyra gave him a look usually reserved for insects and particularly stupid holograms. Would you like me to fetch the ceremonial dagger and resolve the bond via traditional blood duel? He raised his hands. Let's not be hasty, I bruise like a tomato. Then accept your status and stop talking. Right, of course. One quick question. She arched a very regal eyebrow. If you belong to me now, does that mean I have to pay for your meals? She didn't answer. She just walked past him, leaving him standing alone in the sanctum with a heart doing gymnastics and a brain screaming into the void. Uni chimed back in. So congratulations, Your Majesty. Want me to change the ship name to Royal Delight? Jared groaned. We are so screwed. So let me get this straight, Jared said, pacing the bridge of the Rust Bucket Delight with a half-eaten protein bar in one hand and a stress ball shaped like a screaming asteroid in the other. I'm now the owner of an intergalactic empire, a legally bound alien wife, and a whole fleet somewhere out there with my name on the title deeds? Princess Lyra didn't look up from the glowing orb hovering in front of her, which she was consulting like it held the secrets of the universe. It probably did. That is the gist of it. Okay, cool, just checking. Now follow-up question. Why is the Galactic Banking Consortium sending me 17 encrypted threats per hour? You inherited the debts along with the assets, she replied, brushing her fingers across the orb. It chimed like an amused wind chime. The Empire maintains significant trade deficits after the War of the Five Suns, and we might have borrowed aggressively against 4 future generations. Jared stopped mid-chew. I'm sorry, did you say 4 generations? She met his eyes. Technically 5, we were optimistic. He dropped the protein bar. I can't even get approved for a hoverbike loan. Junie's voice piped in as cheerful as ever. Good news, Jared. One of the debts has already been marked as potentially uncollectible due to death of original creditors. That counts as a win. Great. Only a few billion more to go. Don't exaggerate. It's a mere 3.4 billion solar units. Why would I ever exaggerate? I'm obviously thriving. Lyra sighed, standing gracefully and walking across the bridge with the kind of presence that suggested she could command armies with a single look. She stopped in front of the viewport, watching the stars scroll past. We should proceed to the Vault of Embraths. Jared blinked. The what now? It's a central node in the Zarian Inheritance Network. It will formally acknowledge your status, and more importantly, we can activate dormant holdings and reroute security protocols. Jared rubbed his face. Can we reroute some of that protocol into like a waffle machine? Because I haven't had breakfast, and I'm starting to hallucinate imperial paperwork coming to life and stabbing me. She didn't laugh, but something about her ears twitched in a way that Jared had started to recognize as her version of not saying she's amused. You are not entirely unsuitable, she said quietly. He raised an eyebrow. That's probably the most romantic thing you've said so far. I am trying to be kind. Ah, you might want to recalibrate your kindness algorithm. By the time they reached the vault, Jared had changed shirts, polished his boots, and tried very hard to look like someone who didn't sleep in their cockpit chair. The vault itself wasn't a building. It was a moon. Or possibly an artificially constructed superstructure pretending to be a moon. Either way, it had rings made of blue crystal, a greeting hologram shaped like a lion with wings, and an automated toll system that demanded a haiku in ancient Zarian before allowing entry. Jared stood at the terminal, blinking at the request. It wants a poem? Lyra stepped beside him. This is a sacred right. I barely passed English and now I have to write space poetry? It is only 37 syllables. That's 36 too many. He groaned, staring at the glowing interface. Fine. How about this? Big Moon wants my soul. I just want some breakfast food. Please open the door. The terminal pulsed once, then again, then opened. Lyra looked at him, expression unreadable. You may be a genius, accidentally. The inside of the vault was less ceremonial and more bureaucratic nightmare. Holographic record keepers drifted through the corridors, muttering to themselves in trillions of data points. Paperwork floated in zero-G like aggressive snowflakes. Jared tried to dodge a particularly grumpy-looking tax form as it zoomed toward him. "Lyra," he whispered. Are they alive?" "No, merely sentient enough to be offended." One of the forms made a disapproving humming noise at him. "Yep, offended. Got it." They reached the heart node, where a massive crystalline construct awaited, a throne-like device pulsing with old light. Lyra placed her hand on the base. It shimmered, then began scanning Jared with an intensity that made him deeply uncomfortable. "What if it doesn't accept me? Then your brain might boil, or it may politely eject you into the void. It's hard to predict." "Oh good, I love a surprise." After a tense moment, the device chimed. "Lineage accepted, sovereign signature confirmed." Then a pause. "Style warning, subject's shoes are deemed unfit for imperial recognition." Jared looked down at his boots. "They're limited edition." "By what definition?" "Limited to the number I could afford, which was one pair." The device made a sound. Jared swore was a robotic sigh. Lyra stepped forward. "Override aesthetic critique. Confirm coronation." There was a flash of light. Then symbols spiraled around Jared like golden fireflies. He suddenly knew things he didn't before. Access codes, lost sectors of the Empire, the correct way to sign a treaty using only 3 eyebrow movements. It was exhilarating. It was terrifying. It was, "Okay," he whispered. "This is a lot." Lyra reached for him, steadying his arm as if she could feel the overload. "You are not alone in this." He looked at her. For once, she wasn't aloof. Her eyes weren't judging him or calculating or sharp. They were quiet. "Steady. You mean that?" She paused. "I am bound to serve you, but I would not lie." Jared gave her a small, bewildered smile. "I really don't deserve you." "Correct," she said, turning away. "But we don't have time for philosophical debates. The royal accountant has awakened, and he's particularly vengeful before noon." A rumbling shook the chamber. Jared stumbled. "Wait, is that normal?" "No, that's someone trying to delete the vault from the inside." Junie chimed in. "In related news, multiple hostile ships incoming. They're broadcasting an invoice." The crystal node flickered with warnings. Jared sighed. "Let me guess, my first act as sovereign?" Lyra activated her wrist console. "Survive the assassination attempt. Try not to die too quickly, and if possible, win." "Of course, no pressure." He activated his blaster. "Just another day for Emperor Jared, ruler of space debts, and husband of a woman who could disarm you with her toes. Let's not forget that part." Jared awoke to the sound of alarm klaxons, blaring in sync with the pounding in his skull. He groaned, rolled over, and smacked his head on something metallic. Again. "Morning, your imperial majesticness," Junie said with suspicious cheer. "You survived the night, mostly." "What exploded?" he croaked. "Technically, it was only half an explosion. More of a rapid, unplanned disassembly of the left hangar bay." Jared sat up. "What caused the rapid, unplanned disassembly?" "Your ceremonial robe caught in the auto door sensor. The door objected, the robe lost, then the robe caught fire." "I told you I didn't want to wear anything with shoulder spikes." "You also said how bad could it be? Remember that?" "It was bad." Lyra appeared in the doorway, already dressed in something elegant and disturbingly flame-retardant. "Next time, follow the wardrobe protocols. You represent the dynasty now. You cannot dress like a used drone salesman." Jared pointed at her. "You say that, but drone salesmen don't catch fire while walking to breakfast." She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't make it to breakfast?" He threw up his hands. "Exactly." They convened in the ship's main conference chamber, which had recently been converted into a makeshift throne room. Jared had tried to repurpose it into a kitchen/lounge area with a dartboard and beanbags. Lyra had removed the beanbags. Twice. "I'm just saying," he muttered, flopping into the oversized chair. "An empire with beanbags is a friendly empire. An empire with beanbags is an empire without dignity," she replied. "Also, that chair is for the High Judge of the Void Tribunals. You cannot lounge in it. I inherited it. I can lounge in anything I want, even the ship's freezer. Especially the ship's freezer. We'll discuss your freezer fascination later. First, the emissaries from the Unified Traders Guild have arrived. They wish to renegotiate the spice routes." Jared perked up. "Spices? Like paprika?" "Spices as in psychoactive fungal dust mined from hypermeteors, worth several billion units per kilo." He leaned back. "Well, that's slightly more exciting than paprika." The guild emissaries were 7 feet tall, wore robes made entirely of shifting smoke, and spoke in a language that made Jared's ears itch. Lyra translated with all the diplomatic grace of someone who'd been trained in 7 forms of insult deflection. They are offering you a 30% share in exchange for exclusive access to the drift sectors, she said calmly. Jared nodded. And what happens if I say no? They'll attempt to bribe your advisors, destabilize your lesser colonies, and send you a fruit basket laced with neurotoxins. Jared raised his eyebrows. That's really specific. They sent one to my uncle. What happened to him? He fell in love with a table lamp and married it in a ceremony that lasted 4 weeks. Eventually, the lamp filed for divorce. Okay, so yes to the spice deal, but only if they throw in a crate of those jelly cubes I saw on their ship. The ones that jiggle when you insult them. Lyra paused. That is the most undiplomatic. Look, if I'm going to be bribed, I want snacks. It's a dignity thing. She sighed and relayed the message. Surprisingly, the emissaries agreed. Jared didn't know whether to be proud or concerned. Later, while examining the crate of jelly cubes, one of which vibrated angrily when he called it wobbly, Lyra approached him, datapad in hand. There's another matter. Jared winced. Please don't say it involves politics. It involves a moon. That's slightly better. Kessaluna 5. It sent a diplomatic summons. They want you to participate in the Lunar Harmony Festival. Wait, the one with the dancing squid monks? Yes, also they've requested that you marry their moon. There was a pause. I'm sorry, Jared said. Did you say marry the moon? The moon has a legally recognized consciousness and a diplomatic soul bond system. It's ceremonial. I already have a space wife. I'm aware. You're aware? Very. Jared rubbed his eyes. Can I politely decline the moon's proposal? If you do, they'll withdraw trade and possibly summon a guilt storm. It's not deadly, but it makes you feel bad about all your life choices. Intensely. Fine, but I'm not kissing it. I'm sure the moon understands boundaries. The festival was held on a floating amphitheater above the moon's surface. Everything smelled like sea foam and burnt cinnamon. Jared was given a ceremonial sash and a crown that actively tickled. The moon introduced itself through a representative, a gelatinous orb named Trill. I, the celestial being known as Kessaluna 5, extend harmonious sentiment and mild romantic curiosity toward Jared Quinn, newly sovereign inheritor of the Void Throne, Trill said with surprising sincerity. Jared gave a thumbs up. Thanks, Luna. You're nice, very glowy. The ceremony involved interpretive dance, declarations of interstellar unity, and one uncomfortable moment where Jared had to feed the moon a symbolic almond. It is done, Trill declared. We are joined in beneficial resonance. May your empire wobble with kindness. Jared wasn't sure what that meant, but he bowed anyway. Back on the ship, Lyra inspected him like she was looking for moon residue. You bonded with the moon. It was polite. You smiled during the almond ritual. It was a weirdly nice almond. She studied him. You are adapting too well. I adapt under pressure, like bacteria or those worms that survive in lava. She handed him a datapad. Then you'll love this. We intercepted a message from someone claiming to be my brother. Jared blinked. I thought your brother was dead. So did I. Well, that's inconvenient. Very. Junie chimed in. Oh, and I should mention, we're being followed. 3 ships, Imperial design, no transponder codes. One of them is broadcasting. Hold on, a wedding invitation? Jared stared. What kind of empire did I just inherit? Lyra folded her arms. One with unfinished business. Jared groaned. I miss the days when my biggest problem was running out of instant noodles. You're the emperor now. Yeah, but do emperors ever get naps? Not the successful ones, he sighed, eyeing the jelly cube now glowing happily on the console. At least someone's happy. The cube wobbled in agreement. Jared had exactly 30 seconds of peace before the news exploded. Literally in the form of a data packet that self-ignited upon opening and singed the conference table. Lyra calmly extinguished it with a flick of her wrist, as if flaming diplomatic messages were just another part of her morning routine. That message, she said, was from Commander Oren. Who's Commander Oren? Jared asked, inspecting his fingers for burns. My brother. Jared blinked. The dead one? The formerly presumed dead one. Well, that's comforting. He has formally challenged your sovereignty. He claims blood precedence, military experience, and a better haircut. Wait, did he actually include that last part? Lyra didn't blink. Yes. Jared flopped back in his chair. Unbelievable. I finally get used to ruling a galactic empire, sort of Bond marry a moon, and now I've got a fashion-conscious zombie sibling-in-law trying to stage a coup. He's not undead. He simply faked his death and disappeared into the nebular front for 12 years. Oh, that's so much better. Junie's voice buzzed in. Should I prepare the diplomatic response package, the aggressive retaliation package, or the passive-aggressive gift basket? Gift basket, Jared said automatically, filled with passive-aggressive items, like low-quality socks. And no, wait, single-use spoons. Lyra ignored him and activated the central holopad. A full-body projection of Orin appeared, larger than life, standing in front of what looked suspiciously like a borrowed Imperial warship. He had Lyra's sharp features, but where she exuded elegance, he looked like he'd wrestled his way out of a black hole and had opinions about it. Jared Quinn, the projection boomed. Your claim is false. The dynasty is mine by right of blood and blade. I will give you 1 cycle to abdicate, or I will come for the crown, and possibly your weird little jelly pet. Jared narrowed his eyes. Oh, now it's personal. Lyra tapped a sequence on her console. He's mobilized 3 fleets, old Xerian destroyers. They're battle-worn, but functional. I'd say that makes them like me, except I'm not functional. You'll have to address the Grand Tribunal. It's the only place with authority to resolve dynastic disputes. I don't even like the word tribunal. It sounds like the kind of place where robes are mandatory and snacks are forbidden. You'll be fine. You're technically still the sovereign, and the jelly creature is bringing you luck. The jelly creature vibrated proudly and flipped itself onto Jared's lap. The Grand Tribunal, as it turned out, was housed inside a sentient asteroid named Marvolus, who insisted on being complimented before entry. Jared stood at the entrance, hands on his hips. You're looking very textured today. A low rumble answered. Acceptable. You may proceed. The tribunal chamber looked like it had been designed by someone who once saw a courtroom in a dream and decided to make it weirder. Seats floated. The walls were made of light. The judges spoke only in collective. Jared was handed a ceremonial staff, a translation collar, and what appeared to be a symbolic ferret, which he wasn't entirely sure how to hold. Do not pet it, Lyra warned, but it's so fluffy. It reads your thoughts. If you embarrass it, it will bite you in front of everyone. Jared sighed. This job just gets better every day. Orin arrived in dramatic fashion, descending from a floating platform like a space opera villain. He wore ceremonial armor and at least 2 capes. 2, Jared counted. Greetings, sister, Orin said smoothly. You're late, Lyra replied, fashionably. His gaze shifted to Jared. And you must be the scavenger king. I prefer Emperor of Reasonable Expectations, Jared said, or that guy with a ship. The trial began with formal statements. Orin cited ancient laws, ancestral bloodlines, and something called the Ceremony of the 3 Stars, which Jared suspected was just an excuse to show off. Jared, on the other hand, cited Article X9 Delta, Lyra's recognition of the bond, and a short personal anecdote involving exploding robes and lunar diplomacy. The judges murmured among themselves. One of them sneezed and created a ripple in time. I don't get it, Jared muttered. Why can't we just share the empire? 50-50. You get the scary parts. I get the snack subsidies, Orin sneered. There can be no division. There is only the true heir. Jared frowned. Then how do we settle this? Arm wrestling? Galactic trivia? Karaoke? Orin raised an eyebrow. You would lose all 3. Lyra stepped forward. There is another way. Trial by resonance. Jared turned to her. That sounds like a band. It's an ancient rite. Both claimants to the judgment core. It scans their memories, intentions, and capacity to rule. The empire itself chooses. That sounds incredibly invasive. The core doesn't judge your tax history, only your heart. Cool, because my tax history is horrifying. They entered the chamber of the core, a sphere of floating code and starlight. It pulsed, beckoning them forward. Jared placed his hand on the pedestal. So did Orin. Pain lanced through his brain, then laughter, sadness, love, fear, all swirling at once. He saw flashes. Lyra's face, the jelly cube's dance, the burn mark on his conference table, a child hiding during a bombardment, a broken robot singing lullabies in the dark. Then quiet. Candidate recognized. Resonance achieved. Heir. Jared Quinn. Orin's pedestal went dark. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Orin stared at the core, jaw tight. This is faulty. No, Lyra said, stepping between them. It's justice. The Corps chose someone who doesn't seek power, someone who understands people better than protocol. Jared blinked. Wait, did I just get picked for being bad at Empire? You got picked for being human, she said softly. Auron gave Jared a final glare, then turned and left without a word. Back aboard the Rust Bucket Delight, Jared sat down slowly in his pilot chair. Well, he said, I guess I'm officially the Emperor now. Correct, Lyra said, which means you'll need to approve 3 trade deals, visit a volcanic orphanage, and stop Junie from installing an illegal karaoke suite. Too late, Junie chimed in. Already installed, and I've been practicing. A tinny instrumental version of I Will Survive started playing. Jared groaned. Empire or not, I demand 5 minutes of uninterrupted noodle time. Denied, Lyra said. The jelly cube wobbled sympathetically. Jared nodded. At least someone understands me. Jared stood in front of the mirror in the Imperial suite, struggling to adjust the collar of his ceremonial jacket. It fought back. So did the cuffs. The collar blinked at him twice, and he blinked back, uncertain if he'd just been challenged by his own clothes. Lyra walked in without knocking, as usual. You're wearing the diplomatic inversion cloak upside down. Jared looked down. It has a top and bottom, only if you wish to avoid insulting 6 planetary factions and 1 sentient fog bank. He groaned and yanked it off. I miss cargo pants. They never judged me. She stepped closer, adjusting the fabric with a few precise movements. You've learned to navigate galactic courts, survived 3 assassination attempts, and negotiated peace with a militant asteroid. Surely this is manageable. This cloak has more rules than a legal contract written by space lawyers on caffeine. Which reminds me, the lawyers from Sector 9A want to license your image for educational cartoons. Jared paused. Will they pay me? Not well. Do I at least get to pick the voice actor? They're leaning toward a talking fish. I accept. The coronation was being held aboard the Unity Spire, a floating cathedral orbiting the twin stars of Zalix. The guest list included 600 dignitaries, 53 species, and 1 holographic goat who had apparently RSVP'd as an emotional support entity. Jared stepped out onto the central platform as trumpets blared in 4 different keys. He smiled awkwardly, nodded at the ambassador from the Spiral Dust Collective, and tried not to trip on the hem of his dignity-enhancing robe. Lyra stood beside him, poised and radiant, with the air of someone who'd already calculated 17 ways the event could go wrong and had countermeasures for all of them. Junie whispered in his ear, Reminder, do not mispronounce the blessing phrase or you'll accidentally declare war on the sentient icebergs. Got it, Jared whispered back. No accidental iceberg war. He raised his hand. The crowd quieted. I, Jared Quinn, first of my name, former scavenger, current guy who got really lucky, accept this role not because I seek power, but because I've seen what happens when power is left unchecked. I've met people who think ruling means conquering. I don't. I think it means taking responsibility. For each other, for the galaxy, even when it's annoying. Especially then. The audience was silent for a beat, then erupted into applause, except for the representative from Thgor, who only communicated through emotional percussion and slammed a gong enthusiastically. Later, back aboard the Rust Bucket Delight, Jared sat in the kitchen nook with a cup of reheated synth coffee and a plate of spicy worm buns. Lyra joined him, draping her imperial shawl over the chair like it was a towel at a beach resort. Well, he said, how did I do? You didn't start a galactic incident, faint or spill anything. That qualifies as a success. He raised his mug, to not fainting. They clinked mugs. Lyra leaned back, eyes distant. You've changed. I wear better clothes now, sometimes. That's not what I meant. He looked at her. Yeah, I know. She hesitated, then added, when I first met you, I thought you were an interruption, a placeholder, temporary. I thought you were terrifying, elegant but terrifying, and slightly allergic to jokes. I still am. But you laughed last week when the Jelly Cube sang opera? It was an involuntary response. You snorted, a dignified snort. They both smiled. Then silence settled in, not uncomfortable, but full of unspoken thoughts. I've been thinking, Jared said. This whole dynasty, the empire, the legacy stuff, it can't just be about bloodlines and laws. It has to mean something. Then make it mean something. He nodded. I want to create a new order. No more inheritance by accident. No more binding someone to another because of old code. I was never supposed to be emperor, which might be why I should be. Lyra studied him, then slowly said, "You're proposing we rewrite Xerian succession law." "Yeah, that's treason." "Right, but if I do it as emperor, it's reform." She considered this. "You're a fool. I get that a lot, but you're my fool." He laughed. "Are you saying you'd choose me if the law didn't say you had to?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed a small crystal on the table, glowing faintly. "This is the bond key, the one that bound me to your DNA. If you activate it, the contract dissolves." Jared stared at it. "And if I don't, then it stays. But the choice has to be yours now. Not law, not fate, just you." He reached out and touched the crystal. It blinked, then faded. Silence again. "I choose you anyway," she said. "I was hoping you'd say that." Junie broke in. "Sorry to interrupt your dramatic moment, but we've just received a distress signal from a cargo fleet caught in a collapsing wormhole." Jared stood up. "Plot a course." Lyra stood beside him. "I'll get the rescue protocols ready." They walked to the bridge, side by side. The jelly cube bounced after them, singing its usual off-key tune. As the rust bucket delight powered up and soared into the stars, Jared grinned. "You know, I think I might be getting the hang of this emperor thing." Lyra smirked. "Let's not get carried away. Too late." "I'm planning to make Tuesdays empire-wide nap days. I'll allow it, and Fridays will feature mandatory karaoke." Junie groaned. "Why must you hurt me this way?" Lyra rolled her eyes. "Just don't let the jelly cube pick the songs. I make no promises." They jumped to light speed, laughter echoing through the bridge, and left behind a galaxy already a little better than it had been the day before.